So, Nobel laureate Abhijit Banerjee, who's also a professor at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, featured on the latest installment of Rahul Gandhi's series of conversations with economists on the fallout of COVID 19. The first one featured Raghuram Rajan, and we did a video on that. You should check it out. In this one, too, we will review and go over many of the points that they discussed today. So, Tushar, let's begin with the first one. Rahul Gandhi suggested that under the UPA government, they had created a floor for the poor people through his programs like NREGA and stuff like that. And he was talking about how many of the poor people are now seeping through that in the sense that they are not all covered. So this point was made in the perspective of the migrants and the poor people, right? So what did Abhijit Banerjee had to say about this?
I think Rahul Gandhi was trying to gain some brownie points early on in the interview by stating that the UPA had done with policies that took care of the food security for the poor. But I think this government has done well under the Jan Dhan Aadhaar Mobile Trinity. It's been taken care of well. And also, the first problems to be taken up by this government, by the finance minister, when the lockdown happened in March 22, was of addressing the issue of food security. Of course, the migrant issue is there because the ration cards they have, which helps them procure food items from the public distribution system outlets, it is available locally. So often these migrant workers, they leave their ration cards at home with their families in the villages. So in the cities, they have to depend on their own income to sustain the food and everything. So Abhijit Banerjee made that point that we need to look at the issue from the migrant workers' point of view, given we have 100 million migrant workers, even though we have around 800 million of ration cards, if some media reports are to go by, but then we have 100 million migrant workers. So I think the point was made that we need to go for an Aadhaar based PDS system, which doesn't just favor those who have procured the ration card locally. But here's the thing, Karan. Already states are have initiated a pilot project on that, and come next month, June 2020, we would see it scale up across the country. So Aadhaar based PDS is not a unique idea. It's already being planned under a pilot phase in various states. So it's going to be implemented very soon.
Right. I think one of the ideas pitched was that don't worry too much about malfeasance or corruption, and just hand out ration cards, say to a huge cross section of the people, say about bottom 60%, without worrying about pilferation and stuff like that, isn't it?
Yes, so I think if we were to summarize the conversation between Rahul Gandhi and Abhijit Banerjee, it was just give people money, and yes, give them more money. I even tweeted this out because Abhijit Banerjee feels that somehow giving people a direct benefit, a cash transfer that is, would somehow kickstart the economy. Now, I'm not very sure about that. One, we've already discussed the Nyay program, which Rahul Gandhi doesn't forget to bring up in any of his conversations with anyone, anywhere. So he again brought that up that are you suggesting something like a Nyay, like a cash transfer, something like a 10,000 rupees in people's bank account so that when they come out of the lockdown, they have money to spend. But the thing is, if the videos from yesterday are anything to go by, the long lines we had outside liquor stores, I don't think the lack of cash is the problem. The problem is people don't have any avenues to spend it on. Of course, people won't be spending on hospitality that much, on aviation that much, or even companies for that matter. But that's not because they are running out of cash. It's because they're trying to take a precaution so as to travel less, so as to move out less, to as to implement more of those social distancing norms in their personal lives. Now, of course, Abhijit Banerjee feels that if we somehow give everyone 10,000 rupees, problems will be, curtailed to a certain extent. It's a very interesting thing. We go back a little while when Abhijit Banerjee won the Nobel Prize, Rahul Gandhi actually congratulated him and called him the co-founder of the Nyay program. So, of course, they go back a long time on this. But again, I don't really think how is that going to work. Abhijit Banerjee thinks that let's go beyond the 20% of the population, which Nyay originally suggested, go to the bottom 60%. Well, one, it's not the bottom 60%, it's a majority of 60%, right? And even 60% is like what, 750 million people. That's a lot of people. How do you select those? So his next idea was that communities take a decision on their own. at a local level, say at a village level. He even emphasized that yes, you might have someone from the upper caste favoring some people of their own, which is a very haywire argument that, oh, this will happen, that will happen. My only problem is, how do you quantify, how do you select 750 million people, a population more than the European Union, twice that of the United States of America, and hand them out 10,000 rupees, even if there is a machinery in the form of Jandhan Aadhar? So, this point, I really don't understand.
Right. Coming to the MSME sector, he spoke about the need for a huge stimulus package, and he also said that how in the US, despite there being a Republican administration, they have pushed on a huge stimulus package. And along with that, he also spoke about how maybe the government can do much more than, say, a moratorium on debt. Say, instead, just cancel the debt payment for 3 months. What do you think about the suggestions?
I think he was both right and wrong, and I'll go for the right parts first. Of course, the MSMEs need a stimulus package. It's no rocket science. Most of them have disrupted their cash flows. They were just coming out of the GST implementation. They had just started recovering. They were showing some very positive signs. In short, they were starting to enjoy the benefits of the GST, but this happened. Of course, a stimulus is already in discussion. Ministers like Nitin Gadkari have already said that MSME will be given a stimulus package. The second thing which I agreed with Abhijit Banerjee was, until he said we need to extend the moratorium on loans. Now understand, Karan, the moratorium was awarded until May, March, April, and May. Now until May 17th, we haven't kickstarted the economy really. If it took the, because you have to take into account all the supply chains and the red zones too. It's a very interlinked economy. It doesn't mean that the green zones can function independently on their own. Our economies don't work on zones or districts, they work collectively, right? So of course it's a very good idea, and RBI is already discussing it. Just yesterday, I mean last night, there were reports that the RBI was in consultation with the banks and they are planning to extend the moratorium. My problem is, you cannot just cancel off the debt. You cannot waive off the debt, because that sets a very wrong precedent for the future. What if we have a second wave of infections? We have to go in sort of a some sort of a containment zone, sort of a lockdown. Again, your MSMEs will stand to suffer, and so will your big companies. So is our solution for any slowdown in the future going to be give people more money and cancel out the debt? And where does this leave the financial health of the government? So these questions remain unanswered. While I agree with Mr. Abhijit Banerjee that yes, we need to extend the moratorium, I wholeheartedly agree to that. Canceling the debt is something I really don't understand.
Also, this talk came up about the tensions between centralization and decentralization, about how much of the decision making needs to happen at the center and how much needs to be left to the districts, for instance. Did you? What is your view on that?
See, I think again, Rahul Gandhi is using this opportunity to make a point about decentralization. But again, we have seen the panchayats look towards the state governments for resources. The state government is looking at the central government for resources. A very simple case and example. Migrants are to be sent back to their villages in trains. 85% of the cost is being borne by the central government. In the same breath, you want the state governments to take more responsibility. While I agree, I think this is something at Swarajya we've been very vocal about, that the central government going forward needs to focus on the economic front. The state governments can focus on the administrative front. But the last 6 weeks, I think it was a good idea for the central government to take the lead, because it was essential for the lockdown to work. Please understand, right? State governments can take the lead now because we have the declassified the zones. We have in essentially talking about moving towards opening the economy. We're not talking about shutting the economy. So of course, state administrations will take greater control, but they need to be very rational in taking that control. For instance, Delhi government just had a 70% cess on liquor. So policies like these, don't want to kill business sentiment. You don't want to kill demand, right? You don't want to kill the goose that is giving you the golden egg. So the state governments will have to think very smartly when it comes to opening up the economy. Sure, they need to have more power. About the migrant worker tension, he said that the UP government cannot just bring back the migrants without testing them. Well, I think the Yogi government did well. It's remarkable the way they handled the migrant situation, especially how it transpired across Anand Vihar in Delhi. And that's a very dense area, let me tell you, Karan. I often travel through that area. It's a very dense area. So they did a good job by arranging the buses, making sure the workers were taken back, having them in quarantine zones and institutionalized quarantine zones rather. So I think they did well. So I think we really need to have some respect for the efforts that were done there. So to say that, the central government shouldn't have been taking the the forefront on this fight is sort of wrong, sort of harsh, to be honest.
And finally, of course, the strongman theory was discussed in the sense that there is, of course, some conversation about how you need strong, decisive leadership. And when they say strong, they are talking about leaders of the vein of, say, Trump. Uh, and that came up, and Abhijit Banerjee seemed to suggest that that was not the kind of like the strongman type who were needed to lead the situations, because in the case of US or Brazil, they haven't been doing the right things. What's your take on that?
See, I think it's best if we compare it to the United States. Now, United States, because of the COVID-19 lockdown, they had their oil producers hit pretty hard, especially in Republican states. So it took a Donald Trump to broker a deal between the Mexico and the OPEC plus nations to cut down the oil control, which would have helped the oil producers back home. Just a very small example. Oil producers are to the US what MSMEs are essentially to India. Just to give an example again. Now, to say that the strongman theory is laughable at this point, which Abhijit Banerjee seemed to suggest, I don't think how having a strongman at the helm of affairs right now is wrong. Sure, countries will make mistakes. You could say that Trump has made many mistakes. I even agree to that he was a little late to react to the virus outbreak. But at a time like this, you need the central leadership to take command because of the resources they have at their disposal. You can't expect the state. I mean, our states in India couldn't even figure out how to get migrants on trains from other states to their homes. It took the central government to negotiate between them, to arrange for the fares and everything. So to say, oh no, we need to decentralize, again, this is a point I made previously as well. A lot of things are happening right now, Karan. It's not just about the administration, it's not just about the economy. There's also a point of diversifying the supply chains, getting more companies to India. So for things like these, you need the central government to be at the helm of affairs. Of course, they don't need to be over participating, but then you cannot just negate their participation altogether. And again, Abhijit Banerjee seemed very sort of fond the way that the Republicans had gone about the stimulus package, saying it was 10% of the GDP and India should learn from that. Trump led that stimulus package. He was the one who argued for that 2 trillion package, and he's arguing for a trillion more, it seems. So I don't see how that really matches up.
Thanks, Tushar, for the insights. And for our regular viewers, we would like you to take a look at some of our interviews that our CEO Prasanna Vishwanathan has done. We've spoken about what an MSME package can look like, and also spoken about whether there is a need for the Modi government to let go of its fiscal conservatism philosophy that has underpinned its policy so far. Thank you so much for joining us.